our chapel speaker, Paul Lutz. Paul Lutz is camper number 7381. He came to camp in the summer of 1946 upon the recommendation of Don Hilbert, his high school basketball coach and coach of senior basketball here at camp. Paul was a member of the kitchen crew where he met and worked with Willie Schmidt, starting a lifelong friendship. In 1947, Chief Beckman assigned Paul a leader in the Cubs, where he became the D-head under Bob Marshall. Paul is a graduate of Wheaton College of Illinois and the Princeton Theological Seminary. He is now retired after 45 years as a businessman in Atlanta. He has been an active alumnus, serving 28 years as CDA reunion leader in Atlanta, a 3-time member of the Board of Managers, and is here for his 48th alumni reunion. Our speaker gave his first Sunday chapel talk in preseason, summer of 1948, at the age of 18. We welcome him back again to make a few remarks at the age of 90.
Well, good morning. Gosh, I know so many of you, and I can't go any further without saying, welcome, girls. What a great asset to this camp. There's so many stories I could tell, but I promised Dave Langston I would not talk for any more than 15 minutes once I started talking. At the bottom of your service there, at least the ones we have up here, it says that all the offering will go to the Camp Dudley Annual Fund. One day, Willie and I were at a Sunday chapel service. Several times we did a tandem. The two of us led the service together. I don't know whether that's because neither one of us had much to say or whether or not we just did it for the fun of it. But I was sitting up here one time after we have both done our little spiel, and they were taking up the offering. And Willie turned to me and he said, you know, I'm going to get 60% of the offering today. And I said, why? And he said, well, I talked longer than you did. I said, yeah, but I still have the benediction to do. Well, he said, in that case, it'll be 50-50, but please make it short. We had a lot of good times. We were lifelong friends, and I still miss him and Lois. The Other Fellow First has been a fascinating theme, not only from a practical point of view, but a theological point of view, a social point of view, and it's fascinated me. So I have searched scriptures for years and years, and through the years there's 2 places that I have found, one in the Old Testament, one in the New Testament, that seem to sum up, for me at least, how I should experience living the other fellow first. And I want to share them with you. The first one is just one verse from the Old Testament prophet Micah. Micah lived 150 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. And he lived in Israel. And at that time, the people of Israel, believe it or not, it hasn't changed much, we're not helping the widows, we're not helping the homeless, and we're not even favorably helping the strangers coming through Israel. And so the people of Israel kept asking Micah, how can we do better? And he said to them, I'll tell you how you can live a rightful life, a righteous life. And here's the verse from Micah's 6th chapter, verse 8. You can live justly, you can live righteously, by doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly before your God. You can do justice, practice being fair. You can show mercy. The word mercy here in the Old Testament means faithfulness, love faithfully. And the last thing is to walk humbly. Because when you walk humbly, you walk in the most strength that you ever have. Now from the New Testament, Jesus was confronted one day by a religious leader who said to him, Rabbi, what is the most important commandment? And Jesus answered in the Gospel of Mark, the first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind, and with all your soul. This is the first commandment. And the second, like it, is you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. So between those two short verses, 3 verses, I have found the other fellow first embraced in all of Scripture. My talk, which I've thought about for a while, is Throw Another Log on the Fire. And my subtitle would be On the Flame of the Deadly Spirit. Whenever I turn off of 9N onto the Dudley Road, I get a little burning starting within me, a little feeling of warm glow. It reminds me of going home. Feels like I did when I came home from college and turned down my street on which I lived. I got the feeling of going home. I know that when I get here, people who are already here on campus are going to give me hugs, greet me, and be so friendly. Some of whom I've seen, some I haven't seen, and some I don't even know. And I think to myself, you know, that's so remarkable. Here I am, I walk in, and I just start getting hugs, like we're brothers and sisters. And we're from the east, and we're from the west, we're from the north, the south, and maybe even another country. And because of that flame of the Dudley Spirit within us, we're acting like brothers and sisters, and we've known each other for all of our lives. It's a wonderful feeling. And not only that, it's a remarkable feeling. In a weekend like this, in one way or the other, I think you'll find that you've been throwing another log on the flame of the Dudley Spirit within you. Through your associations, friendships, warmth, forgiveness. I bet you've forgotten about the news. No newspaper, no TV. You still have these little things. But think about it. It's just wonderful to let that spirit flow and grow within us. Lois Schmidt, a former First Lady of Dudley, put it this way. When men enter the gates of Camp Dudley, grown men, they rekindle their spirit by becoming like little boys. And she was right. And she is right, even today. Going back a few decades, when I was a leader in the late 40s and early 50s, there used to be on campus once or twice a summer a group of 3 or 4 older men. Well, I thought they were very old at that time in my life. And I often wondered why in the world these fellows were here. They were too old to run and play basketball or even bend over to get a ball off the ground playing baseball. When they jump in the cold lake, they'd scream like they're in pain. So I couldn't quite figure out why they were here. My curiosity got the best of me one day. So I asked Ken Hafter, who was nicknamed the Dutchman, I asked Ken, what in the world are these old men doing here at Camp Dudley? And he said, you mean the firemen? I said, yeah, the old guys. What'd you call them? He said, firemen. I said, what do you mean? Well, he said, most of them are volunteer members of the Board of Managers. Some of them are YMCA employees of the New York YMCA. And they have come here to see what they can do to watch over camp. I said, what are they watching over? He said, well, they want to be sure the boys have fun. He wants to be sure they're safe. He wants to be sure they're happy and healthy. And I said, you mean everybody a happy camper? He says, that's it. And I thought to myself, what an appropriate title, fireman. Not here to put out a fire, but here to build up one. Here to throw another log on that Dudley flame that lives within us. And that's what they were here doing. And it was a whole new history lesson for me about camp. At that point, camp was 63 years old. And I had never even thought about the history of Camp Dudley. Coming to the kitchen crew, you know, you came to work, you didn't come to think about the history of Camp Dudley. But when I became a leader, I got interested in it. The oldest of these firemen was camper number 1, George Peck, the respected Uncle Dudley. And he was here in 1949 and 50. He lived in McLean, and he would be around camp looking at the fellows and so forth. I got to meet him. It's strange in my life. I've always had an attraction for the young people and for the old people. And I got to meet Uncle Dudley and talk with him. And I remember so well, he would sit on the porch of McLean before lunch and dinner and supper in the evening, and mostly cubs and plebes would gather around him. Here he is, 84 years old. And he would do magic tricks with his hands, sleight of magic tricks. And I can hear those kids in my head today saying, do it again. You know, how'd you do that? And he just loved it. And then when I would withdraw a little bit and step back from the crowd around him, I thought to myself, here are 7 generations of the Dudley spirit being bridged. 10 and a half, 11 and a half year old boys talking to a young and alert guy of heart who's 84 years old and sharing the same spirit and flame about Camp Dudley. Our friend here on the platform today, 11. I'm 90. Think of that. The same Spirit passing all these generations. Now 73 years of my experiences at Camp Dudley. That flame is still growing, starting out again. And I whispered to him and I said, didn't I? I said, I'd like you to come back and talk when you're 90. Well, after meeting these firemen and Uncle Dudley, I used to have Uncle Dudley come down to our cabin and give vespers. And he would tell us about starting camp with Sunday Dudley, Sunday Dudley. And I just can't imagine having somebody like him come and talk to those kids, but he loved to do it. He always, I can remember him so well talking to the boys about the love of God, telling them about how years and years before when he was at camp, they started it. They used to have Bible reading every day and prayer time. And it was a small group of fellas, 15 or 12 fellas was all they had. But then he would offer a prayer for all the boys at camp, in the cabin. And he always prayed that they would know that God loved them, that they were to love others, and he would say, particularly your parents and your teachers and yourself. Well, after he would pray for all of us and talk a bit, the boys would give him a hug, and I would walk him up the hill at Cub Alley, up to McLean, with a flashlight so he could see where he was going. And I would think to myself, here I am, walking up Camp Dudley Hill in Cub Alley with a fellow who started the camping experience for boys in America. What an impact that had on my life. And he was truly, truly a fireman. And I can see his influence still today carrying on in the lives of all of us. After meeting these firemen, I realized that camp was a pretty special place. It was a community that I had never really run into before, not at school, not at college, not even in my family life. It was a unique community. And I realized also that here there was such diversity of people with some commonness about them that kept them together. And I realized through the years that this is really the flame of the Dudley Spirit, which is the true foundation and inspiration for Camp Dudley and Camp Kinea today and in the future. Hey, it survived 135 years. Been through tough times, tough financial times, tough times finding recruits, war and peace, depressions, and we're going to go through some more challenging times. But that will be handled. I talked with Matt a little earlier. We were saying, that there's going to be challenges to find people with empathy who want to come and be leaders. We're going to find difficulty in getting campers from all around the country and the world. It's because of the fear and the environment that we live in today, which doesn't encourage trust like Camp Dudley does. And there's going to be a difficult time keeping the money flowing in, always. Places like this don't run without money. You have to be practical enough to have the funds to support it, to do the job. So when you write a check thinking about you throwing another log on the fire, because that's what really happens. You keep this flame going like in this 11-year-old and then the baby here that hasn't grown up yet. I did some research in our archives a couple of years ago. Between the transition years, when Chief Beckman was leaving at the end of 1947, and Bob Marshall was taking over as the new director at the beginning of the summer of 1948. I found, I need a reference here, I found in the July 7, 1948 issue of the Dudley Doings a list of 10 goals that Chief Beckman gave the Camp Dudley ought to follow each summer. Now remember, Chief gave these 10 goals as his chapel talk the first Sunday that Bob Marshall was the new director. So here they are. I want to read them to you. 10 goals. 1. Health giving. 2. Appreciation of nature. 3. Wholesome fun. Social adjustment, number 4. Next, self-reliance. Next, joy of achievement. Altruistic service. Leadership training. Religious worship. And number 10, character building sums up purpose of Dudley, which results from following the first 9. I don't know any other institution, none, that have goals like that and want to pass them on to their constituents. Not one. I also read the list of the 8 most endangered words in our country at this time. Listen to these in contrast. Endangered words. Compassion. Honesty. Truth. Facts. Competence. Sanity, morality, science. Now let me read again the Dudley list. Health giving, appreciation of nature, wholesome fun, social adjustment, self-reliance, joy of achievement, altruistic service, leadership training, religious worship, character building sums up the purpose of Dudley, which results from following the first 9. I'm so glad you're here, Marnie, and Matt, of course. I want to congratulate each of you for teaching the boys and girls, the youth at our camps, about values and transmitting them in such a way that it gives them an inner strength to live today and to live in the future. That's an institutional value from these 10 goals that we can keep on going in the flame of the deadly spirit, and we will, because of our family sitting here on this hillside, along with so many others. The flame does go from generation to generation. I recently read a statement, too, from an old person like myself. It said, the more I mature, the less I know. And that is true for me about some things. But at age 90, I know for sure that I am thankful and grateful to be a part of the Dudley family. And I know so many of you are too. So together, let's support and work to keep the flame of the Dudley spirit glowing bright. Throw another log on the fire. The other fellow first. I can testify it's a good way to live and enjoy life.